Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today we're going to do a current events. I was going to do this as a breakfast chat, but my electricity was out again due to the ice storms down here in Texas, and it didn't come up till after 6 a.m. Got my food cooked and realized it was way too loud in my gym to actually use the mics. It gets loud out here outside, so I decided let's just do this as a voiceover with myself and a bunch of my lifters doing good mornings in the background. And you guys just watched me, for those curious, do 555 pounds for a max in that opening lift. And that guy right there, that's actually with that bar, that's 350. He's doing 15 reps. So let's talk about the good morning. Greg Doucette did a video, and I'm going to try to be polite. I'm going to not insult Greg. I want to keep this positive. But he made a video stating that the good morning is a dangerous exercise, not worth it, maybe only for power lifters. Well, I only coach 3 powerlifters right now. I have way more fighters than I do powerlifters, right? Out of my current 24 clients, I only have 3 powerlifters. All my lifters do good mornings. And before we get into the problem with what Greg demonstrated, let's consider the fact that some of the greatest strength coaches in the history of the world believe the good morning is a non-replaceable exercise, right? Louis Simmons basically says it's the single most important exercise you could do. Now, people say, but he was a powerlifting coach. Yes, he did coach like 100 world record holders, but he coaches MMA, he coaches football players, fighters, sprinters, everyone else. He has everyone live on the good morning. I have everyone live on the good morning. Now, if we come over to actual powerlifting itself, though, what did Dr. Ben Pollack say? That the good morning is the single most important, or the single best squat and deadlift accessory that you can do. He's written that in an article. Now I want you to look at a bunch of my guys moving some real big weights, and I want you guys to look at what they are doing versus what Greg is doing. And yes, my lifters all use this lift. We use it for high rep work, for hypertrophy. We use it for 1 rep maxes to learn how to strain and to carry over to your squat. We use it for therapeutic and rehab purposes. We use it for injury prevention and recovery. I do a lot of variations of this. I have a lot of my lifters do these with just bands for restoration work, okay? And every one of these guys are moving pretty big weights that you're watching right here. You know, different clients of mine, I just threw in a collection of them in there. Some of them you've seen before. But, you know, they're all moving big weights on this movement with different bars, different variations. And again, even these 10 plus rep sets, I'm even going to do some sets of 20 on here with 277 for 20 rep sets. We're getting up into pure hypertrophy range at that point. You're not getting anything else out of that other than hypertrophy and stamina or endurance. Okay, so Greg demonstrates this lift, and here's the problem with it, that I feel that he's being very, very, very irresponsible, because he says that the lift, well, it's not worth it unless you're going to power lift, or if someone, I guess, they're going to pursue serious strength. Something that Greg gave up on to pursue bodybuilding. The problem is that he's got a massive following. So what's going to happen if someone sees what he did and says, well, I want to risk it? Okay, if you guys watch what Greg did, I'm led to the conclusion that in spite of his many, many, many years of experience and himself being a coach, he doesn't know what a good morning is. Because everyone, and Greg used to be a power lifter, I'm going to assume he knows what the average power lifter knows. When you perform a good morning, you set it up like your squat. Now, I know Greg has squatted deep into the 500s before. Okay? I know that he does not there's no way he could squat the weight that he squats with the barbell sitting up on top of his neck 3 inches above his traps. So I don't understand why he chose to show that on a good morning. What? Which leads me to believe that he has never learned what the exercise is. He's never done it before, and he doesn't even know why people actually do it, because it's not done for the low back. Now, what he then proceeded to do, he did not hinge at the hip. This is a hip hinge exercise. We hinge at the hips, just like a Romanian deadlift, okay? Your hips on a good morning do the exact, and I mean the exact same movement that you do on a properly executed Romanian deadlift. Identical. He did not hinge at the hip. He did not keep his back into extension. He rolled his back without hinging at the hip with a barbell on top of his neck. I don't know what in the actual fuck that was that he did. But it was not a good morning. I don't know. He could call that a Doucette. But it sure as fuck was not a good morning. By any definition that I've ever seen or taught. And the problem we run into also is that you have channels like me and you have all these other coaches telling people to do good mornings, and then this guy comes in and says, well, it's a dangerous exercise. It's an exercise that helps prevent injuries. It's not dangerous when performed correctly and programmed correctly. Okay, it will help prevent you from hurting your back. It will help keep you from getting hurt doing heavy squats. In fact, it will build your squat. And then he goes on to say that, hey, well, it's powerlifters do it for their lower back. Really? That's like saying that bodybuilders do lat pull downs and rows for their biceps. Okay, that's how silly that statement is. Yes, those movements do help build your biceps. Plenty of studies show that. We know you can build biceps with those movements. That's obviously not the only thing you do for your biceps, but you're trying to do a lot more. Right? You're trying to build bigger muscles than your biceps with those exercises. Well, the good morning's the same way. The good morning builds your entire back. It builds your glutes and in particularly the hamstrings. Okay? The good morning produces an extremely strong stretch reflex on the hamstrings. If you hinge at the hip and keep your back in extension, two things that Greg did not do. Right? The two things he didn't do, which is standard execution on the exercise, creates an extremely strong stretch reflex in your hamstrings. In fact, sometimes after high rep good mornings and you're not used to them, your hamstrings will literally cramp up. They will get cramps. The injuries that I've had from my lifters on good mornings have been hamstrings, not back. I've had two lifters when they did an AMRAP and pushed it too far, had pulled hamstrings. Right? Like one of my guys pulled a hamstring doing 350 for 15 reps. He pulled a hamstring. We had to deload him. Because he was supposed to AMRAP the last set, and maybe he rest paused it, took it a little too far while fatigued. Pulled his hamstring. That's what happens. The good morning is a key hip hinge exercise. It builds the muscles that you would build with any other hip hinge. And if you're worried about shear stress on your low back, then my God, don't ever do a Romanian deadlift. Because it puts your back at the exact same angle, and if you are using proportionate weights, you're going to have the same amount of shear on your back with a Romanian deadlift, because you're forced to use a heavier weight. Because pretty much anyone out there, barring grip issues, that's why most guys strap up for the RDL, is going to be stronger at it than a good morning. So you take someone like me who can, do 375 for 10. Well, let's take someone even weaker. Let's take someone who does 225 for 10 on the good morning. That's their 10 rep max. How much weight do you think that person would have to put on a Romanian deadlift to get the same rate of perceived exertion? In other words, to hit failure on the 10th or 12th rep. Right? And that's something I see Greg promoting. Yeah, failing at 12 reps. Taking a 12 rep set to failure, I don't think Greg thinks that's a bad thing. So if you hit 12 reps to failure with 225 on a good morning, how strong are you on the RDL? 315, 340, 350 is probably what you could do for 12 reps on that movement, if you actually train it hard. So you're going to get the same amount of shear, because yes, it's a slightly shorter moment arm, but the weight is higher. The hip angles, the back angles on a Romanian deadlift are identical to a good morning. So how is that not a dangerous exercise for your back? I haven't seen him say, oh, we shouldn't be doing the RDL. How about a regular deadlift? I know for a fact he programs, because I've seen some of his programs out there that people have bought, high rep deadlifts. You're telling me that's not putting shear stress on your back? You're telling me that that's safer than a good morning? Right? In what world is that safer? Okay, any exercise to which you hinge your hip correctly is going to put shear on your low back. It's unavoidable. You might as well do the one that puts the least shear and maybe lets you use a slightly lighter weight, which would be the good morning. for the same, again, perceived exertion. Because again, once you get strong, if your hamstrings and glutes and stuff are strong, you're going to move ridiculous amounts of weight on these movements. And I get it. A lot of bodybuilders don't care about their lower body and their back. They care about their pecs and their biceps. But for anyone who cares about other muscles, you're going to be moving monstrous weight on these things pretty quickly, if you have glutes and hamstrings. And then all the athletes out there, most of my clients are athletes. I don't coach any bodybuilders. Not interested in it. I'm not interested in it. But we come over and look at the muscles worked in the Good Morning. It works every single muscle used in the squat other than the quads. Every muscle other than the quads gets worked very hard. It is a general hypertrophy exercise for your entire posterior chain and your back. All your erectors going all the way up almost to your neck. Mid traps, lower traps, glutes, hamstrings, hips, abs. It's a hypertrophy exercise for all of these things. And it's an amazing one. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.